There was a terror attack on Tuesday in New York. This is from CNN. 8 people were killed and almost a dozen injured when a 29-year-old man in a rented pickup truck drove down a busy bicycle path near the World Trade Center Tuesday in Manhattan, New York City. The suspect was identified by two law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation as Sayfullo Saipov. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that middle name. He's from Uzbekistan in Central Asia, but had been living in the U.S. since 2010, sources said. Authorities found a note claiming the attack was made in the name of ISIS near the truck used in the attack, a senior law enforcement official said. Quote, "This was an act of terror and a particularly cowardly act of terror," New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said, aimed at innocent civilians, aimed at people going about their lives who had no idea what was about to hit them. Yeah, so horrendous act of terror. The guy, literally looks like Bin Laden. Like, he looks like Bin Laden. And this guy's a scumbag. He gets whatever's coming to him. Now, he is not dead. Usually, in situations like this, when there's either a mass shooting or there's a terror attack, I think probably more often than not, the people involved end up killing themselves. The perpetrator ends up killing himself. But in this case, that didn't happen. They have him in custody. You know, this is a guy who he got into the U.S. and, you know, I think the evidence to this point suggests it's not like we missed somebody who came in who was radical. While he was here, he appears to have become radicalized. But, dude, you're from Uzbekistan. So, you know, one of the rationalizations that these people who are with ISIS or Al-Qaeda give is they talk about how the West, America has plundered my lands, imperial power America, and we're just getting revenge for what you've done, all these innocent Muslims you've killed. You're from Uzbekistan. You're not from Iraq, you're not from Afghanistan, and that's not me saying it would be okay if this person was from Iraq or Afghanistan, of course not. But in this situation, you should have nothing but thanks and praise for the United States of America. You were let in this country. This country didn't do anything wrong to you. And then furthermore, the logic of going after, by the way, 5 of the people killed were citizens in Argentina, and they were here on vacation. And there was one person who was Belgian. I think 2 Americans were killed. But the logic of massacring innocent civilians, because of what? Because you think you were harmed by the West, but you weren't. Okay, but then the next thing is, because they're infidels. Oh, please. According to this guy's own logic, and according to the logic of ISIS, 99% of the Muslim world isn't pure enough for your interpretation of Islam, for your fundamentalist interpretation. So these are the same kinds of people that slaughter Shias and go, they don't count. They slaughter moderate Sunnis, go, they don't count. Slaughter Kurds, you don't count. You know, Sufis, you go down the list of all the different interpretations of Islam. Everybody to them is, they're not pure enough. They're not pure enough, and therefore we will massacre them to prove how superior we are. Well, that's not superior. This is an inferior act. It's a criminal act. It's an act of terrorism. And again, he deserves whatever he's got coming to him. But we do have the other angle of the story, which is that the government is doing everything in its power to fuck up the case. So listen to this. This is from Slate. The Trump administration has said it considers the New York terror attack suspect to be an enemy combatant. By so labeling the suspect through the president's war powers, the administration can detain him as it would a prisoner of war. The announcement follows urging by Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham, who said they thought the suspect should be taken to the American prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The suspected attacker, Sayfullo Saipov, is a legal permanent resident of the U.S. whom police consider to have been domestically radicalized. but McCain argued that the distinction didn't matter. Quote, he's a terrorist and he should be kept there, John McCain told reporters, and there's no Miranda rights for somebody who kills Americans. So this is now typical of the far right in the United States. They look for opportunities to take due process and habeas corpus and the Constitution and human rights and civil liberties and throw it out the window and go, let's abandon everything we're supposed to believe in and let's abandon liberal values because terrorists exist. And of course, it only works in one direction. If there's somebody who's a Muslim terrorist, then they go, oh yeah, go hold him in Guantanamo. But by the textbook definition of terrorism, Dylan Roof was a terrorist. He had a manifesto talking about how he's a white supremacist and he believes in Rhodesia and apartheid South Africa and blacks are inferior and yada, yada, yada. By the textbook definition, he's a terrorist. Did any of these assholes say, hey, ship him to Guantanamo Bay? No, they didn't, because they go, well, look, we're a law and order country. And you know how the Republicans always say, law and order, that's what we're about, law and order, law and order. They sure do throw out law and order quickly when they get scared because it's a foreign, somebody who was foreign, but again, legal permanent resident of the U.S., terrorist. So no, and by the way, this is how you fuck up the case. This is how you fuck up the case, because think about it. What happened at Guantanamo Bay? Well, in the fallout of 9/11, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, got in contact with cohorts in Afghanistan and Pakistan, by the way, warlords in many respects, and said, hey, look, we were just attacked here. This is horrendous. We got to get these people back. Send us people who you know who are jihadists, who are Al-Qaeda. So what happened? It's not like Afghanistan and Pakistan and the warlords involved in this transaction were on the up and up and were principled people. No, they rounded up whoever their own political enemies were and they shipped them to us. So we had countless innocent people held at Guantanamo Bay. And over time, we had to slowly release the ones who there was no evidence that they were jihadists. And who, like, you know how the Republicans, they made it, oh my God, Obama's releasing people from Guantanamo. How dare he? The underlying implication of what they're saying is he's releasing like jihadists. He's releasing Al-Qaeda people. No. They were releasing people who, they were like, we can't find any evidence of any wrongdoing on these people's part because it was just a political grudge that warlords shipped them to us and pretended like they were jihadists, so we'd lock them up. So this is the problem. You put them in an extrajudicial legal limbo sense, and you don't have due process, so you can't establish guilt or innocence. So you're making it more likely to botch this thing and put us in a corner that we can't get out of. Because what are you going to do? Lock somebody up forever, indefinitely, in that situation? Wouldn't everybody be able to rest easier if you go through the proper procedure, go through due process, take this guy to court, and you'll get him. He'll be found guilty in an instant. We know it's him. He's on fucking video. So go through the right process, go through the right procedure, and then yes, give him life in prison without the possibility of parole, and we're done. We're done. But no, guys like Lindsey Graham and John McCain, they want to throw out our values and everything that we're supposed to believe in the second something like this happens when it's a Muslim terrorist. But again, if it's a white terrorist, they don't want to do that. But my point is, take that mentality you have when it's a white terrorist or when it's a mass shooter. Nobody would think in a million years of going, oh, it's a mass shooter who's an American citizen. Let's send him to Guantanamo. Nobody would think that. So you need to think the same way when it comes to a situation like this, because that's the best way of getting justice. And the way to prove that you really believe in the values you espouse is to stick to those principles and those values when the going gets tough. And this is one of those situations where, you go, wow, this guy was a Muslim terrorist who was a legal resident of the United States. Well, I guess some people who aren't as bright might think, let's send him to Guantanamo Bay and potentially botch this thing further. But no, if you really believed in your values, if you believe in the Constitution and due process, and you believe in what America is supposed to stand for, well, yeah, he gets his day in court, and yes, he will be found guilty, and then you lock him up and throw away the key. So it's amazing to me how the law and order people apparently don't really believe in law and order. The people who claim to love the Constitution don't really believe in the Constitution. And they throw out due process the second that it's a Muslim terrorist Well, no, this is the time when you're supposed to stick to your values the most to prove to the world we're better than everybody involved in this, okay? We're above it. This is a dictatorship acts like that. Oh, well, when it's somebody who's extra bad, well, then I guess we don't really need, legal protections and due process and to have a system set up in place whereby we adjudicate justice. So it's just a sad situation. I don't want them to botch this case. I want them to get it right. And the way you get it right is you go about it through the proper channels and find him guilty. But John McCain and Lindsey Graham, and now Trump, of course, they're like, yeah, Guantanamo. Guantanamo sounds like a good idea. Oh, you fucking idiots. Oh, you're so stupid. How could you possibly do that?